Hello, and welcome to the NOTstalgia podcast.
A podcast where we discuss the retelling or continuation of pop culture favorites as seen through a queer and feminist lens.
My name is Eric Lefebvre.
And my name is Jessica Tercero.
And this week, we are joined by a very special guest, Mr. Eric Best. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, you guys. I'm just really excited to talk about, these two movies.
What movies are we doing this week?
Should we yell in like
Yeah,
3
are you guys
seconds?
ready?
3, 2, 1.
Dune! Screaming. We're doing Dune. So once again, on the pulse of pop culture, iconically, and we're so good. So we're doing Dune, the remake, and then the original 84 David Lynch Dune. So we're going to talk about a lot. I know it's a heavy subject that I am brand new to. I have no history with this. Eric, what is your history with Dune?
So I have been just aware of Dune since I was like a teenager. It's just one of those things I think kind of weirdly has permeated culture, not because it was a huge like franchise, because obviously the David Lynch film is like this weird cult movie. Mm-hmm. But I think it's one of those things that like has like it has this really underrated thing about it, because it never really got its moment in the sun, I guess. So I've always been aware of it, and then I did see the David Lynch film probably in like college, and then didn't think about it for several years. And then suddenly I, knowing that the movie was coming out, I did read the book just this past year, and the sequel as well, and just got pumped for the movie. And now I have rewatched both movies. I've seen both twice now.
Yeah.
And I just love Dune. I don't know.
It's so good. Yeah, I growing up as a kid, my grandmother, who was like weirdly religious, also was like only had like, I had one grandma that had like TBN, like Christian channel on all the time. This grandma was also religious but had Sci-Fi channel on all the time, which was incredible. So it was like, I remember watching Dune as a kid and thinking it was like so fucking cool, and then I didn't watch it at all, and I like it was in the general like in my brain forever, but I didn't even think about it until I took a sci-fi class for college, sci-fi literature, and for some reason we watched Dune instead of reading it, and having a lot of the context for like just sci-fi in general, like a lot of the motifs, a lot of the themes that like permeate sci-fi, like the power of liminal space and sleep or awaken, right, which is like literally said verbatim in this movie. It was a whole different experience watching it. Yeah. And also watching it as an adult too. So like I could not be more excited to talk about this, because I wrote a whole fucking paper on this movie, and like I've read like people do like their master theses for their like doctorates on Dune because of like the roles of women and the roles of men, and then like the blending of the two with like this iteration, the first iteration of like Paul and Muad'Dib and all this, and I'm just like, I have a lot to say and I'm so excited.
I'm pumped. I feel like they're both very dense. Should we just jump in?
Yeah,
I feel like it's
absolutely.
just a great place. Cool.
Let's do
jump
it.
in.
Okay. In the year 10,191, the current emperor of the Imperium hatches a plan to get rid of the House Atreides, who he believes is a threat to his throne, by allowing them to take over spice production from the Harkonnens on the planet Arrakis. When the Atreides arrive, they are faced with a number of challenges the Harkonnens left for them, including failing equipment and assassins. Luckily, the heir to House Atreides has been training in both physical and verbal combat thanks to his many trainers and his mother, Lady Jessica. In the middle of the night, the gross boy Harkonnens come back to commit genocide with the help of the Duke's doctor, as was agreed by the Emperor, and take back Arrakis for themselves. Paul and his mother Jessica are able to escape using the Voice, which is the Bene Gesserit's literal unstoppable power of suggestion, and desperately try to find the indigenous peoples on the planet called the Freemen.
A plane crash, terrifying desert, and giant sandworm chase later, Paul and his mother are embraced by the local Fremen, including the mysterious girl from his dreams, Chani. Paul is quickly heralded as the new Messiah thanks to local lore and legend, and is tasked with teaching the Fremen the Weirding Way. Paul, or rather Muad'Dib, is sent through quite the set of tribulations. He survives the ingestion of the water of life, he conquers and rides the sandworm, and even becomes an older brother to a newborn Aliyah. In a final battle some years later, the Fremen rise and destroy the lording Harkonnens, and Muad'Dib is declared Kwisatz Haderach, aka the Messiah, officially. So I feel like, as someone who knows nothing about this, lot of new information for me. Lot of lore, as is with any good sci-fi. Lot of verbiage, but overall, kind of a cool story.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
agree.
totally.
Cool. We're done. We can just wrap it up right there. That's perfect. Honestly,
I wasn't sure if you were like setting up for something to be like,
No.
"Ba-ba-ba-boom."
No, honestly, I think we covered all of our bases. Thank you,
Oh,
Eric.
good. Are we ready for the next one?
Oh, okay.
We
Cool.
love that. Perfect. Yeah, it is, I feel so, truthfully and honestly, it's my first ever David Lynch film.
Oh,
I have
really?
not seen
Wow.
literally anything else of his. And it's one of those like catalogs, obviously, because he has such a history, like Mulholland Drive, Blue Velvet, Twin Peaks, obviously, like it's humongous. I've never seen any one of them, including Twin Peaks. And this is my first dip into anything that is Lynch.
Well, this is the one that he like doesn't even claim. He's like, whatever, this isn't even
Right?
even my
Yeah.
movie. It was whatever. And I mean, a lot of it is because he took this over from another failed project, right? Which you watched a documentary on.
Yes. So the Jodorowsky's Dune, which is Alejandro Jodorowsky's this filmmaker who did The Holy Mountain. This was like his passion project, his life project. He spent like years and years trying to make it. I think he got like H.R. Giger and Dan O'Bannon and like a bunch of these other big sci-fi people. And it's a movie that never was, but it was a really cool documentary. It has nothing to do with like this, but the first project was his, and then this became David Lynch's. I think like probably 12 years later, because it was a couple years before Star Wars that that one was supposed to happen, and then it just never did.
Which is wild because I feel like in my head canon, like this came before Star Wars. And I mean, because like technically it kind of did. It just wasn't released to audiences before then. But like when I think of, like Star Wars, obviously like, big space epic, but like this feels like something that laid the groundwork for that, even though it came technically after, because like,
oh yeah.
There's just so much happening, and it's so rich with so many great characters and like great like these like different factions and different houses. Like I'm so intrigued by like the Bene Gesserit, right? Who like literally use telepathy to like they are controlling the entire world through the shadows, right? Controlling the men, and like in doing so, like it's not even like feminist. It's because they're also like policing themselves and telling like the woman has the power to choose what gender her baby is going to be when it's in the womb. She's like, nope, this is what I'm going to do right now. Like, and they tell that like they're breeding humans to try to be the superhuman, the Kwisatz Haderach. Oh my God, I'm so bad at saying it.
Kwisatz Haderach, I guess I would say. Yeah.
Yes.
Kwisatz Haderach, yeah.
No, it's so weird.
It is a little bit of a mouthful.
Well, yeah, and I mean they pull from. I mean, there's a lot of kind of made up words, but it is like a lot of like seemingly Arabic words too. That which we will probably talk about, but I just feel like the movie in general, like it's so crazy that this was made in two fairly large budget movies, because like we were saying, it's so big. There's so much lore. The book is just packed with information, and the fact that David Lynch got it all into one movie, which we'll obviously talk about too, because this new movie is two movies. It's two parts. But
two huge long movies.
Two long movies that still don't even begin to explain some of the basic things about the world. Yeah. But it's such a just complex thing. And I mean, and this David Lynch film, like we can talk about it. I mean, it looks good. It is, it has its like charm and it has its moments where it's a little strange, like you're questioning the budget, but the just at the beginning scenes look so good for the time.
So fantastical. Like immediately, like I was taken out of wherever I am in the world, and I'm just like, oh no, you are somewhere else. Like, and it's just weird enough, and it's just familiar enough, and it's like it feels timeless, even though it's like kind of it's way far into the future, right? Because like they don't have computers, right? Because like AI is a thing, and they don't even talk about this in the movies, but like AI rose up and tried to like kill everybody. Is that right? And then they like got rid of AI and computers aren't allowed at all.
It's truly something that they don't like talk about, and the book can be so selective about talking about like the technological limitations of everything, like the still suits and stuff. But yeah, it was just like not a phone in sight, just people vibing, just in the desert.
and to be fair, like I feel like this movie was, and rightfully so, moments of exposition dumping, which are needed for such a big lore, but to the point of where like even in the inaugural like screen crawl of information dumping right off the bat, she disappears. She's like, here's all the information you need. She fades out and she's like, oh, and one more thing. I forgot some stuff because there's more stuff to be said now.
Yeah.
And
the
now
exposition
the movie,
queen, like, the exposition queen of Princess Irulan.
Yes.
We love her.
And it was such a funny, like, oh, okay, I feel like I know what I'm getting into with this because it's very, I feel like that was like
it's very
a nice
camp.
little comedic, it was a kind of comedic beat that was like, felt like a really nice starting point of like, this is a lot.
Also, the fashion and the hair, like fucking incredible. This whole movie, just like, I feel like this movie definitely did it better than the next one. The next one is not very, I love the next one too, but this one was just more pleasing to look at in a lot of ways.
They Suspiria'd it.
Yes, they did.
Kinda. But not to say, because like, I mean, I loved the new one. But
I did too.
Yes, from a color perspective, like when we're in like the Harkonnen layer and like everything's green and their hair is red and it's like black and white checker and like smoke and it's just like this weird like cartoonish cavalcade of just mess and you're like, where are we? And it's fun and it's gorgeous and cool, but it also does feel like the most cartoonish sci-fi possible. Actually, this is a good place to start because I want to talk about the Baron a little bit, and this one specifically, because of the very clear and fun villainy queer coding trope that we love, but also the toxic, predatory, pedophile, disgusting queer or gay male, like
and incestuous,
be afraid, and incestuous queer male thing that they were doing to make him more monstrous. What's that about?
Well, and like literally making him like not only like grotesque in like, you know, morality wise, right? Like this movie is very cartoony, so it's like the good guys are very good and the bad guys are obviously very bad. But like, what can we do to make him badder? So they were doing those things. But like literally even like with the repulsiveness of his physical appearance, with his like Dr. Pimple Popper next to him, like just constantly working on him. And then like literally like the heart plug thing where like he like rips out their heart and like or like, you know, bleeds them dry and stuff. Like all of that was and like not even hiding the fact that like he's pining and like drooling over Fade, but like it's Sting, right? It's Sting.
He's like, oh my god, my son is so hot.
It's his nephew, but
nephew. Sorry.
But he's
my
definitely there's very weird sexual tension between them, and of course his like Sting's leather suit is just, you know,
and his
extremely tight, and he looks like the most like normal almost of all the Harkonnens, and he's just like obviously meant to look handsome, we'll say, especially compared to his uncle. But yeah, it's a very strange stereotype of like a depraved homosexual character or something, someone who is like, you know, and it's, you know, they pull it from the book. It's not like this movie's inventing this thing. The character does have that in the books and everything, and And the heart plugs, which are not in the book, are, at least as far as I remember, are very strange too. I got the very Peter Thiel vibes.
Yeah.
From like, I don't know, people joke that he like whatever, but
it's a very weird, because that whole scene, it's like, how do we portray him having sex with this child without having sex with the child? Okay, it's like, how about he bathed in his heart blood? You're like, what? Mm-hmm. Like, this is so strange.
Has an orgasm while doing it.
Yeah,
and then
it's just like he
looks
like
over at
rubbing
Sting.
It. Yeah. It's just like such a strange, and I understand for the sake of like menacing visuals of like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know what I'm looking at. Why is this happening? What is the point of this? Like, it's supposed to be intentionally like confusing and a little bit scary, but it's all at the expense of like that obnoxious and toxic perpetuative trope of the predatory homosexual, which is that whole thing. And I guess for the time, it's also not like the new movie is doing this and we're like critiquing like, wow, in 2021 I can't. It's like, not that time forgives anything, but there is at least some contextual based expectation in knowing that this movie is like 36 years old or like 30 years old almost, right?
Yeah,
and it would be different if there were different expressions of gay relationships or anything queer at all. But the movie is really based in a very patriarchal, very gender-based society. Even the most powerful and most empowered women who have the most agency, I mean, we can talk about Jessica or something like that after this, but like, they don't even, like, she doesn't even get to be queen. She's not even queen. She's the Duke's sort of concubine. And so she's literally the most powerful like person in the book until like, you know, Paul becomes the Quetzal's Haderach, and she's the concubine. And I just think it's a very patriarchal society. She's
literally stronger than him in every way, and she can make anybody do anything she needs them to. She can literally control the world, and still she's just the sex friend or like the concubine. Exactly. Like, she's essentially nobody.
Even with like going back to the Harkonnens, right? Like the scientist guy, right? Like he has rape fantasies about her, about controlling her, right?
Oh, yeah.
And like, because also in the Harkonnens, we don't see any women there because of this, you know, queer coding of them. But also, like, you know, even the straight ones that are within that house, like, feel like they just dominate and dispose of women, because I think we maybe see one who has a heart plug. But, like, other than that, we don't see any whenever we see the Harkonnens. But, yeah, like, the Bene Gesserit, like I was saying, like, they... Even though they're so powerful, I love that the movie, both movies do this, where they have power, but they are not feminists, clearly. And that is clearly distinguished, where like a lot of the times we, you know, like, oh, woman, girl boss, fucking get it, go, go, go. But like you see them as villains because even though they are all powerful and even though they, you know, literally can make anybody do anything with this fucking terrifying voice that they have, right? Like this commanding voice, like they can tell you to kill yourself and like you're gonna fucking do it.
Yeah.
Why haven't they fucking overthrown the emperor? Why don't they just like, why is this plan of theirs taking like millennia? Because literally they could just get that shit done today. But like Jessica is the one that rebels against that, right? Like she gets the mother Bene Gesserit, what's her name?
The Reverend Mother, we call her, but she has a Helen Muhayyam or whatever. She has a very complicated name.
Yeah, Reverend Mother Muhayyam, I think, is like how she's referred to.
Yeah, she so Jessica was her best student, right? And she literally goes to her and like is like talking down to her, saying, "You think you could make the chosen one come? How fucking dare you?" She's like yelling at her when I mean, literally Jessica did. She was like, I'm over this. I'm just going to fucking do it. And yeah, he has the voice and yeah, he can do this. It's fine. Like, so I love Jessica as a character breaking out of that faux feminism kind of like lifestyle that the Bene Gesserit kind of like embody, where it's just, they're controlling the world through men. They never allow themselves to have that control openly. And they are content just being concubines and, you know, having babies. They literally, the Bene Gesserit are women that just have babies and to bring forth the male that is going to save the whole fucking world. And that's bullshit. That's not feminism at all. And I just love that we never see them as good guys, and we never see them as that, because they just put each other down at literally every spot. And there's like this place that like they're afraid to look as women, like, you know, in knowledge they can't look or they'll go crazy, or they in order to pass knowledge on to another they have to surrender their life. And so many of their traditions that to me seem very patriarchal in their roots, even though they're posing as a matriarchal like society. So just that internalized patriarchy is just so on point and so nuanced and so deep that I can't wait to read the books and get into this, because like you could just probably talk about this forever.
Well, and Jessica in the Lynch movie, so I just noticed how kind of almost high femme she is, honestly.
Yeah.
In the movie. She has this really, I mean, they do really make her look like a royal. I mean, she has this, you know, large ginger updo most of the time.
Gorgeous.
And meanwhile, Reverend Mother, famous bald queen, love
queen. We love a headdress moment. We love a sit back.
Yeah, I love the Reverend Mother in the first scene. She's just she's just amazing. I mean, and it adds to the witchiness too, just her whole goth like drag getup almost. But Jessica, I mean, she is very femme, I think, in it. She obviously has like a lot of, you know, gowns and everything. Later in the book in the movie when she's with Paul in the desert, she's almost wearing like a nighty dress, I feel like, half the time. And it makes her almost look so much more feminine. But at the same time, she's this Bene Gesserit warrior queen almost. She like up and coming, like a princess like type of role, where she is extremely powerful mentally. She's been training her entire life to serve the Bene Gesserit, to maybe perhaps become Reverend Mother. She's so powerful and so feminine at the same time. I do feel like they play her up almost kind of damsel-esque in the Lynch film.
Yeah.
Where she's with Paul, who becomes stronger and stronger and stronger, and you know, they play up his abilities. You know, we can talk about this, but like when they meet the Fremen, for example, like Jessica is the one who fights Stilgar, who kind of like, you know, disarms him, and that's like stops them from killing them basically.
Like immediately. Like
immediately.
Without thinking about it, she's just fucking in it. And even getting out of the plane, right? Like the second that her gag is off, she's just like, fucking kill yourself, done, go, like move on, we're done here. Like, yeah, you're right, she is so incredibly powerful. Whereas like the Reverend Mothers and the rest of the Bene Gesserit that we see, who kind of like hide their feminist under their big giant headdresses and like under this black shapeless clothing, she kind of like embraces it, which is really cool. And I think that kind of imagery works really well with her character, just openly defying, you know, their wishes and what they want in order to do what she wants and what she feels is good. And, you know, and I love that the Messiah wasn't born unto like the Bene Gesserit plan, but instead was born out of true rebellion from that plan. You know what I mean? Right.
And the Bene Gesserit are people who kind of work all behind the scenes and sort of are people who are like laying the groundwork for a Kwisatz Haderach to come for, you know, someone to sort of attain this ability. But it's almost like, you know, building the plane as you're flying it. They're kind of trying to get this word out, and like, you know, there's all this, people believe this person is going to exist, but you know, this person doesn't exist yet. So I think that's where kind of this religion sort of pops up with the Fremen. But the people who have power, they just have a very like feminized type power where they're kind of working within their networks, and
they're girl bossing.
They're gatekeeping, they're girl
bossing. They are
100%.
gaslighting. They are lighting the path with the gas.
You're gonna have a boy, you're gonna have a girl, you're allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. Like, I'm sorry, Queen, who do you think you are? I am the Reverend Mother.
I know that this is going to be very confusing for the listener, but Eric, my partner Eric was talking to me, Eric, not Eric Best on the podcast, about I don't know if this is true. Maybe you can enlighten us just in terms of like the lore of the way apparently the spreading of the information to the Fremen and to several other worlds of the culture of the House of, what is their name?
Atreides,
the House of Atreides, spreading their culture and their sort of like ways of existing to all of these other planets as contingency plans to, if ever they're in some kind of a bind, it'll make it look like they're meant to be there or they have like authority or power over. So this idea of like Paul being the Messiah is arguably just a contingency plan, or like it was intentionally planted. Like these ideas of like, oh, he's coming back was sort of like a governmental or a government regulated strategy to make sure that the family was safe when they were on the planet, right?
But that's in the second one, right? Because like that doesn't happen at all in the Lynch film.
That doesn't happen. Okay,
no, it doesn't happen in this Lynch film.
But that happens. We find that out in the book later.
Yes,
we find it out. Yeah, it's true. It is
it's
something
true.
that happens. It's true in this more in the new movie. Jess, you're totally right. Where it is, the Ben and Gesserit are people who they're kind of everywhere. They have they have this network that, they're like spies almost, but like operate out in the open, and they're in all of the royal houses and everything throughout the houses. And so there's sort of like this myth making that happens. And, it's like, who even knows what the Kwisatz Haderach is? I'm like, how, if you're just thinking logically, I'm like, we just came up with this like Messiah and no one's been it before. Like, how do we know who it is? And like, clearly people, if they had Dune phones, like sand phones, they'd be like texting about it, talking about it, posting about it.
Just writing in the sand about it. Like,
there's memes about it.
Oh yeah, and there's literally just like 3 or 4 like traits that they know, and they're just looking out for that constantly, basically. And Paul checks all the boxes basically right away. And yeah, it's obviously more in the second movie, but I think it's one of those things that, Paul doesn't know that he's the Kwisatz Haderach, but he begins to believe. We go on that journey with him. And I think it's still true in the Lynch film, where we go on this journey where he's supposed to be 15. He doesn't look 15 in the Lynch film.
He looks 35.
He looks like, yeah.
But he, goes on this journey, and time works very strangely in the movies too, where we don't know how much time has passed really. But he goes on this huge journey, and I think as he goes through, he begins to realize and build confidence in that he is this Messiah. But
which is an interesting conversation.
He has his mother right there next to him, who has literally given him like the foundations of what he needs to, who's literally given him life and given him all of the knowledge that she has and taught him how to use like her skills. And like, okay, I'm sorry, we don't get very many like Jessicas that are like all powerful and fucking badass, so I'm just like, yes, Jessica. But like, she has this daughter who's like, all like, again, she breaks another tradition where she's pregnant and she drinks the water of life, right, which is iconic. We love. And then that baby is born all-knowing and all-powerful because, again, Jessica broke the norm and broke with the Bene Gesserit and just did what she fucking had to do. And seeing her stand tall at the end of this movie, like, this is all because of me. My children did this because, like, just
so she's
power
amazing.
Of, like,
amazing.
Rebellion.
There, is it Alia or Aaliyah? Alia is so fucking cool. She's like the sickest character. She just shows up and she's like a literal child, younger than a child even, baby possibly. And she just like walks into the place and she's like, you should be afraid of me. And they're like, who is this girl? And she's like, my brother's coming. And then she like does the controlling voice. They're like,
on the
shit.
Reverend Mother. And then they're like, oh fuck.
And it's so cool because she looks so fucking sick in that like headpiece. And she's just like, she's
brother.
I could not, again, knowing nothing about this, I had no idea that a child comes into play, anything like that. And to be fair, this is wild. I did watch the new one first. And then I watched the Lynch. So it was like a weird thing.
Wild.
So I got the first half, which I was excited about because I was like, oh, well, if it's a half, then I can go back and watch the same half and the rest of the story. So I had no idea that she comes into play at all. So when she did and she's awesome, I'm like, oh, well, she's perfect. We must save her at all costs. I mean, obviously she's going to control the world, so there's no like issue there, but she was just like such a nice little surprise.
Yeah, and that's when the movie just goes full bonkers.
Oh yeah,
there's moments of it like it leading up to it, but then that's when I think David Lynch, as the visionary behind this one, he really, like, as far as the tone goes, like the tone of Dune is all over the place in this movie.
Oh yeah,
there's like these regal scenes. We open with Princess Irulan and then going into this palace with the Emperor, and then by the end, when you're back kind of at this place of kind of with the Emperor and everyone around, it couldn't be more of a different tone. I mean, everyone is running around. The Emperor himself is like on like the battle systems, the shooting stuff. I'm like, they have people for this. You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Like all the characters from the beginning are back, and then there's just this child.
And the pug is alive.
And the pug.
Thank you for bringing that.
Thank you for bringing up the pug, because
Praise be.
Because Patrick Stewart is like taking care of the pug
God
throughout the entire movie, and then the pug shows up at least 5 or 6 times. Yeah,
which is also one of those moments of time lapse where you're like, wait, what? Where he sees him like on the field and he's like, hey, it's you, and he's like, hey, it's you, and you're like,
but he's got like this like mullet happening.
Yeah,
like this bald mullet.
Obvious years have passed. Like so much has changed. And suddenly it's like, I've missed you. And it's like, you guys saw each other 20 minutes ago. I'm like, I don't, what do you mean? But it's that I feel like there's that last half, like you said, is very bonkers. It goes all over. And then suddenly it kind of just like, it's that showdown in the main hall with Sting. It's a very quick death, very fast. Like the fight is not long. And then suddenly Alia's like, he's the Kwisatz Haderach. Hooray. And they're like, hooray. And credits. And you're like, oh.
And it rains. Can't forget that it rains.
Oh, and it rains for the first time. Yes. Come back with the Messiah biblical business. Big Noah vibes. We're coming right in there with a fresh rainfall.
It
was such a weird end. Like, it was just a lot at the end. It got wild.
The first, like, hour and 45 minutes, like it seems like paced pretty okay, right? Like we are learning a lot about, we have a lot to learn about all of these different houses, about all of these different things. We learn a lot about House Atreides while learning nothing about House Atreides. We don't really know anything about Gurney, who's Picard's character. Not a lot about Duncan. We get a little bit about Daddy, where he's like talking about like, how we need to change, and so he's kind of like setting the tone of what's going to happen with the rest of the movie, right? Literally with Sleepers Awaken, which is literally like a theme that is like huge in sci-fi. Like I could not believe that they named that. And like we get like, oh, okay, so he values life because he cares about that more than the spice. Cool. And then like as soon as the fight happens, as soon as like House Atreides is like decimated, the movie just fucking goes, and it is so fucking quick. Like, I remember even as a kid being like, I want to know more about Chani. I want to know more about the Fremen, like, because like obviously the Fremen are incredibly technologically advanced in order to create a lot of these things that they do, right? The still suits themselves, right? They have these giant lakes of water underneath the surface. They have hundreds of thousands of people like living under, like essentially like the entire population of Earth living underground and still surviving, and still, which we get into more, I think, in the next one. But like you see that they have like factories and and technological capabilities that have just been fucking completely hidden from the Imperium, which is so cool. I want to know more about that. And that's why I'm really excited for the next Dune movie, because I feel like we only got like 30 minutes of that in this movie, and it was all just point A to point B because we had to go on this journey with Paul. I want to come back to the Freeman, but we had to go on this journey with Paul, right? Where he has to like where the spice kind of like awakens him, and then he like starts to like question the relationship between the spice and the worm, and then he like takes the water of life, and then all of the Bene Gesserit in the entire like universe start crying blood, which is sick as fuck. So cool. And he like takes a new name. One of the things that I wrote about for my sci-fi class was how Dune itself is like a thought piece on gender and gender expression and gender norms and the violence that exists within the binary. And until we collectively move past that, we will all be oppressed by different systems and by ourselves and by just like literally the entire societal structure in the world. And so because, you know, we've already talked about how the Bene Gesserit literally like are patriarchal, even though they are matriarchal supposedly. And then we see all of these different portraits of masculinity through House Atreides and through the Harkonnens and through the Imperium and all of that. It's also really interesting how everybody uses sound, right? So men use sound as a literal weapon. You know, they use words as a weapon to destroy their enemies, whereas women use it to control their enemies. So thinking about language and how that works within like the different gender norms, right? Like when men complain about women, it's usually because like, oh, well, she tells me what to do and she does this and she does this. And then like men, like how often does like the words that they use, like because in this story, they say that it has a shape, right? And so when you use a violent word, it inflicts violence, right? But it's not until Paul essentially like gives up because he's already kind of on that journey where he is walking in both worlds. He's learning from his father and from the men and secretly learning the ways of women through his mother. And as he begins to embrace more of his feminine side, right, of all of that, he's able to become the Messiah. He literally could not become that unless he had, you know, learned how to use the weirding way and how to use the voice and taken the life of water. And he even like goes so far as to like take a name, like by calling him at a certain point in the story, by calling him Paul, you are dead naming him. Yeah. You know, and that's what I really, really, really love about Dune. And that's what I really hope that they explore in the next movie, because I feel like there's so much substance there. And that's honestly why I want to read the book so bad, because I love seeing these different gender binaries and what they look like and the harm that they cause and inflict on the world and on themselves, and how the only way to like get past that and to reach your full potential and to stop all of this violence and everything is just to like get rid of the binary and embrace the fluidity of gender and like everything.
Right.
Well, you could argue the fluidity of life.
I mean, from the yeah, 100%.
Well, and the Kwisatz Haderach, like that ability is to tap into the genetic memory of both men and women.
Oh shit, yeah. Really?
And presumably, you know, non-binary people as well in your family, but so being Jessica becomes Reverend Mother of the Fremen, and Paul becomes the Kwisatz Haderach. So they have this genetic memory, and you know, we see that with Aaliyah, who is this bizarre creature at the end, but only because she has this, you know, potentially billions of years of genetic memory downloaded inside of her directly. Which is honestly
iconic. So sick.
From the womb. And so it is this pulling of both male, female. And then there is a kind of this obvious binary to the gender binary to the book. But I think you're right, where it is kind of both breaking the binary, but kind of like using these both genders, I suppose. But
yeah, I think it's like just bringing that up as a conversation. I think the movie and the story itself, from what I've seen, is interesting because it can be both things at the same time and discuss both things, both in their positive and negative attributes at the same time. In the same way that like Paul's journey, the hero's journey within this story, is it a self-fulfilling prophecy? Is it true? Is it not? It's like kind of irrelevant because they both are true, but his journey and the emotion and like the experience behind it and the growth that comes from it is still real nonetheless. So like seeing that at the same time, I just think it is a story that does a great job at kind of exploring the complexity of life in the ways that it does, or in the sort of intersectional existing of like both this and that, and not just one or the other, and in the way that a lot of stories keep it very binaristic or simple or basic for the sake of story. I feel like, I mean, it also, to that end, has a lot of information. It's not like a simple story by any means. It's huge, it's expansive, it's incredibly rich, and oftentimes very like intentionally misleading just for the sake of like, I don't care if, or at least from what it sounds like within the book, like, I don't care if you're following along, this is the story, so like either figure it out or stop reading.
Totally. And when I think about this, like this first movie, I mean, there's just a thing of like Paul bringing technology to the Fremen. It's almost like this, there's like kind of a Pocahontas type tale there that we've seen. It's definitely a colonialist narrative.
That's what I wanted to talk more about. I think it's just the overall story, both this movie and the next, obviously. It's the colonialist narrative here. We're supposed to be rooting for this hero. However, it's these two capitalist powers who are feuding over native land that belongs to neither of them. And the whole crux of the adventure starts with like the supposed good guys being sabotaged by the supposed bad guys. And that sets the hero's journey, sort of sets the hero on his path to then be embraced by the native, for him to become entrenched in native culture. And like, it is very Pocahontas-y. It is very white savior.
And it is supposed to be like okay, because it's like he's the Messiah. This is prophesied, right? So that's like the pass that it gives to itself, which I'm not a fan of.
No.
And I'm also like, when you think about too, like House Atreides and where they come from a land that is like covered in water, that has so much sea and has so much green and has so much like, so, and I think they do a much better job kind of talking about that, or like illustrating that and the point of the Fremen in the next one. But in this one, it's like, okay, cool water home, and then goes to a cool desert home, and now I'm your savior, and you couldn't do this without me, and here I am. And it is really, like, that aspect of it is incredibly gross.
It's like, it's the biggest part of the story that I struggle getting past. Mm-hmm. Just because it really is like, it is recontextualizing like a several millennia old Christian ideological story that's already whitewashed like a Middle Eastern hero to some degree, to this next degree of like, no, let's rewrite the Messiah's story, but literally make him white. Ooh,
and make
the
like, people he's helping white.
Yes.
So literally everybody is white in this.
It's really bizarre. I mean, it is an interesting story, but like at its core, base level, what is happening is real messy and weird.
And it's not like really addressed as such ever. It's just, you're not even supposed to question this. This is what this is, and it's fine, and it's 100% good.
Which is such a strange point of view. Just for it's like there's an assumed goodness or an assumed acceptability to the scenario that we're just placed in, that like, that's not even, why would you even look at that? It's about Paul, and Paul like being good and being a good guy, and it's like, well, is he? Like, right. That's the,
And then there's to me, I mean, Eric, I agree, like I do kind of struggle with that part of it. And then with the Bene Gesserit vision, people have seen a lot in this because it is problematic, but it's a eugenics experiment based around a small, like a young white man to basically become like, they've created like the superhuman, and it's a white man. And of course, I don't need to describe how problematic that is, but but it has that eugenics part of it where if you are basing all of humanity on a white boy in the desert, like what is the future of humanity going to look like? It's probably going to, I mean, obviously there, when you're thinking about that far, I mean, I guess there's a meta-human, meta-species thing where like we're thinking about humanity in these grand thousands and thousands of year timelines. I get why the movie doesn't touch on like race and stuff, and in that sort of timeline, it's more about humanity, I suppose, rather than like a specific race. But the movie itself, when it's committed visually, we see white people there. In the Lynch film, I think I saw maybe one black person toward the end who I specifically was like looking for, basically, because I'm like, where are they?
Yeah. And they tried to like address some of this in the next movie, which I'm excited to talk about, but I think a lot of it fell flat. And when we get into the next movie, then
I mean, it's arguably, and I know that most of these are like, it is arguably like a straight remake just cut in half. So I feel like a lot of the same conversations apart from aesthetic we're going to be having. So if you guys want to like drift on into the next one,
it sounds like we should just move on.
Yeah, let's do it.
Should we do it?
Yeah. I'm gonna... In the year 10,191, the current emperor of the Imperium hatches a plan to get rid of the House of Atreides, who he believes is a threat to his throne, by allowing them to take over spice production from the Harkonnens on planet Arrakis. When the Atreides arrive, they are faced with a number of challenges the Harkonnens left for them, including failing equipment and assassins. Luckily, heir to the House Atreides has been training in both physical and verbal combat thanks to his many trainers and mother, Lady Jessica. Paul accompanies his father to propose an alliance with the leader of the Fremen and tries to learn as much as he can about his new planet while wrestling with the uncomfortable notion that the Fremen believe he is the Kwisatz Haderach.
Then, in the middle of the night, the creepy boy Harkonnens come back to commit genocide with the help of the Duke's doctor, as was agreed by the Emperor, and take back Arrakis for themselves. Paul and his mother Jessica are able to escape using the voice, the Bene Gesserit's literal unstoppable power of suggestion, and desperately try to find the indigenous people on this planet called the Fremen. They manage to find the Judge of the Change, Duncan Idaho, and a few Fremen who perish helping them escape the Harkonnens yet again. A plane crash, terrifying desert, giant sandstorm chase, and a duel later, Paul and his mother are embraced by the local Fremen, including the mysterious girl from his dreams, Chani.
And so we are at smack halfway in the story, 2.5 hour film, this remake that just came out last week or 2 weeks ago. I do want to open, before we continue the discussion, with something that just like really absolutely tickled my heart and my brain and every part of my body. Oscar Isaac, when he says to Timothée Chalamet on the cliff, he says, "If you say no, you'll still be the only thing I ever needed you to be, my son." Now, I'm going to just run away into the forest because that is so like, I feel like in a lot of these movies, there is so much like this, like, you have to do this. It's your lineage, it's your duty, it's your destiny, that whole trope. And I was expecting that here. I was expecting him to just be like, well, that's why you're here. And his response is like so beautiful and so like unyieldingly hot. Like, it's just like so aggressively hot to be so empathetic and like cool. Just to be like, yeah, if you say no, that's fine. You're forever will be the only thing that I've ever needed to be, and that's my son. And you're like, I'm going to scream. Anyways, I have to say that off the bat because it really sets the tone. Oscar Isaac, please call me. Let's start.
I mean, this character, who was like a fully realized character in this movie, was so much better. And
oh my God.
And it's those moments where like he's talking to his son, even when, you know, like Paul doesn't want to like do his fighting stuff or anything. He's like, hey, I need you to hear me. We're in actual literal danger right now. Like, this is where we are. And, you know, he like actually shares his thoughts and his counsel with his son. And he's like trying to set him up to be successful in life, not necessarily to be the Duke, where he's like, sure, like, I hope that you pick that. But like, if you don't, like, that's super, super fine. I didn't want this. This is where I ended up. And like, wherever you end up, you're going to do great. And, you know, I hope that you are happy. Like, that's literally all he wants for his son. And I'm just like, oh, stop. I love this. We so rarely get to see a good father-son relationship that just subverted most like tropes. And I fucking ate it up. And
well,
Oscar
it's
Isaac,
the
just
main
like
toxic masculinity bullshit of patriarchal lineage, which is like the big issue with a lot of this shit, where he's like, yeah, I love you regardless.
And you see that
and you're like
and you see that not just in their relationship, but you see that in every relationship that men have within House Atreides, where they're just like, you know, with Duncan Idaho, right? Where like him and Paul are like best friends. Like Paul is like, this is my confidant, this is my person, this is my boy. Like I'm here. And you see like just the nourishment that men are allowed to give to each other and the admiration. And it's not like, ew, gross, get off of me, ew, feelings, gross. Which in the last one, like Paul was not like, he didn't feel anything when his dad died. He didn't feel anything. Like at any point, we don't see him break down and really like have emotions, right? He's just kind of looking off into the future, like, okay, this is happening, but like, I feel something else, right? I gotta go ride that fucking worm. In this one, we see him break down and get upset with his mom, you know, and get like, and have feelings and have joy and have sadness, even if it is like a little bit more reserved. And we also, the other thing I really love about men in the Atreides house is that they listen.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, sure, Daddy Atreides is like, you know, like, hey, let's be friends with the Fremen, right? But it's Paul who like has learned this from his dad, but like takes it a step further and says, no, you're right. We are here on your land. Like, that sucks. You know, like he's listening and yes-anding, you know, and not trying to like be advantageous or like strategical about like where in that moment, like where he's trying to head, you know, he's listening and he's saying, why wasn't this turned into like a beautiful oasis? Why wasn't this, you know, like he's questioning all of these things, and it's okay and it's allowed in this.
Yeah, and it's important. I guess I see two really important reasons for that. One, I mean, you have in the scene, again, you have a similar scene where you have Paul, he has, you know, kind of a really strange, in the Lynch film, this really strange practice fighting scene with a robot kind of thing. And then in this, he still has that scene with
other
Gurney Halleck.
Other daddy.
Josh Brolin.
Yes.
And he has this fight scene. This is a kid who was born to be in a violent scenario where he would need to protect himself. They have shields. And again, we haven't talked about the shields, but the shields, oh my God, so much better. In my opinion.
I mean, to be fair, those blocky fucking brick glass moments were actually really sick. But to be fair, I did love this version of it with like the red and the blue. It was a really nice mechanism that worked.
It was easier to follow.
But this is a kid who who can't be like soft, who can't have his guard down. He's literally going to be assassinated when he's relaxing in one scene in both films. So just the fact that he is able to have like this tender moment with his dad, we don't see that in the first film, but it's such a rarity, you know, in this person's life where he's literally going to struggle like the rest of the movie. And then two, where being in the House of Atreides, being basically the prince of the Atreides, having that emotional intelligence is really key to surviving. Like, you know, if you're thinking about someone who is being sent to Arrakis, this new planet with new people, there's a lot, I'm sure, on your shoulders where you have to be an emotionally intelligent person. So it seems like really key that they would pass that on to him.
And in the last one too, we didn't really talk about it, but it felt like House Atreides, its downfall was it was over trusting and it was too naive, right? Where it was like, oh great, everything is here, we got this, but like ultimately it was undone by just one weak link in their chain, right? Whereas in this one, and they like in the other one aren't like, oh well, we're gonna die, everything's like, they don't suspect anything. It feels like they're just kind of like, woohoo, we got a new house, this is great. And in this one, you like right away, everybody knows that this is bad and that something is going to happen. And that is apparent for every fucking character, where they're just like, okay, we are in danger right now. The minute that we step on this planet, we are in fucking danger. Something is going to happen. You need to be ready. But they're still also allowing this time for, you know, tenderness, and, you know, they have their guard up, but like they're still like bringing it down for each other, which I like. And it's not, they're not ignorant or oblivious like they were in the last one, you know?
And it feels like, at least for the narrative that this story is trying to present, it feels like a way more realistic way that this supposed savior would act and exist. Like, he isn't he's not like intentionally breaking rules, but he is kind of like, I'm allowed to just exist, and like the embrace of that existence, like at every turn when it's like he's in the suit, they're like, oh, how did you know how to do that? That's like traditional way to wear this. He's like, it just felt intuitive. And it doesn't, in the other one, it like, I think it works similarly just with the dialogue, but like all of these small moments, and even when they're like in the helicopter, the Dragonfly helicopter in the storm, and his intuition is to turn it off and just fly through and go with it. Like these moments, it makes way more sense in this movie than it did in the other one, because it is the embracing of life and not the structure of years and years and millennia of hierarchies and power structures. He's just allowed to be, and they see that, and he just is without any ego.
And he's
like,
not questioned. Like, even when he does that, like, you know, with the grasshopper helicopter, his mom doesn't say like, what the fuck are you doing? Oh my God. She's just like, cool, I trust you. Like, no matter what,
there's an inherent trust and a respect that is constantly given to him, and that he gives at any turn, that is so lovely. And I mean, you see that love regardless, like say with him and his father, and like him and his mom, there's an inherent like understanding that like, I can do this, and if I can't do this, I will ask for help.
And every person that he's close with, even though like most of them perish, like they all save his life in one way or another, even if they're not there. And that's how he was able to like, you know, get to where he is at the end of the movie. Like Duncan, right? Like he gives him the compass, which shows him where to go. But more than that, like there's a line that Duncan says where he says, dreams make good stories, but everything happens we're awake. We have to make it happen. Which is really interesting, because Paul has all of these dream sequences, which are really fucking cool. But like, it's so interesting how they use the dream sequences to foreshadow things that were going to happen, and to also like play them out of order, so we don't have the full context for them, right? And we don't know what they mean. Or, you know, like I thought that Paul was going to have to die, and then like, you know, they were going to bring him back to life or something. But like, no, like that was the death of Paul and the birth of Usul. You know, like I forget his name, but the man that he killed, right? He's like, I will show you the ways of the desert, right? And he did. So the subverting of that as a trope, I thought that was so fucking cool and so interesting. And so, yeah, like Duncan saves him by like telling him like, hey, dreams are dreams, you know, but we make this happen. Like you still have to make choices when you're awake. It's not like, even if you think it's like prophetic or whatever, like it is still you and your actions that decide what will happen. And then Jessica, you know, again, with like the voice and just like giving him life and having him be a man instead of a woman, which whatever. But then like learning diplomacy from his dad, you know, learning those survival skills from Gurney, you know, like we see every single one of those things come into play and literally like save his life and get him to where he needs to be, because he was nourished and was able to be nourished while, again, just being a kid and just being himself, doing what he wants to do, and like being allowed to like show feelings. And yeah. Ugh.
Right.
God, so
I feel like Jessica is quite different in this film. You know, in the Lynch film, she's a little bit more, I would say, melodramatic. The whole movie's more melodramatic, so it has higher highs and lower lows emotionally.
Yeah.
It's just all over the place. And then Rebecca Ferguson as Jessica, she's a kind of more tightly wound character, it seems like. She's more quietly intense rather than more outwardly intense. She, you know, I don't think we always see her arc. I mean, it's just as big as Paul's. If you think about a character, we don't get to see her complete, or either really complete, you know, thing in this film, because it's just the first part. But the climax of this film obviously is when they meet the Fremen and Paul kills Jameis, the Fremen warrior who challenges him. And at that end, I mean, Jessica is like the warrior monk who is, taking Javier Bardem down, momentarily to subdue him. And I don't love her portrayal in this movie, but Jessica, I find like generally like an impossible character to portray in film. I just given that like men make movies generally in our flawed world, and, and I just don't think Jessica fits any sort of script that anyone would get. Like, but I think she plays a quietly intense character. I don't think she jumps off the screen in the way that sometimes maybe Jessica maybe would in another film or something. But I just found her performance interesting. I don't love it, but I definitely don't hate it. I think she had just a very different character.
Yeah, I really honestly wasn't a big fan of this Jessica, because coming off of especially the first one where she is so strong, and even in her moments of weakness, there is strength. This one, she felt more timid, much more terrified of everything around her. And to me, it just, she didn't feel very confident in herself or in what's happening. And there was just a lot of things it felt like the only choice that she made in this whole movie was to have a boy. In the other one, it felt like her character had so much more agency, where she's even terrified when her son says like, oh, I know you're pregnant. And she's like, oh my God, you can't, how do you know? Like she's so afraid of anybody knowing things or knowing about her. And I think that that's probably part of the conditioning from the Bene Gesserit, probably, because we do get like a little bit more of an intense portrayal of them too. But I don't think that really serves her. Like where, the Messiah myth that, the Bene Gesserit have prepared. And they are like, okay, whatever, we'll tell everybody on the planet that the Messiah is here. And like in that story, it's the mother and the son, right? You will know by the mother and the son. And she's just a footnote in this movie, it feels like. She's just around. She's just there. And I really, really didn't like the portrayal. I didn't like, sure, we got like more of like her and the Duke like talking or whatever. And one or two tender moments, which is fine. But like, I feel like we just see a lot of men forget about her, where like, even the Duke is like, I should have married you. And like, we find out like he's just going for the throne. That's what he wanted, and that's why he didn't marry her. And then like, even her son, like, I mean, she's just kind of around.
Yeah, I struggle with her character because I feel like they made her more realistic almost or believable in this movie, where we see her kind of struggle with femininity. Like she's walking in these crazy shoes that don't make any sense out of a spaceship onto a desert. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, you wouldn't wear that, obviously, unless you were royal and a woman. And then we have the scene with her and Oscar Isaac, the Leto's character. And she struggles, like they have a relationship issue. And that's not even, I don't even think it's even in the book. It's not in the Lynch film.
Yeah.
And so like they actually have a relationship. And like, I don't need to tell anyone that relationships don't always work out smoothly all the time. So them having a fight when they're literally moving to a new planet, I think naturally you would fight in that scenario, right? About like even how you're going to decorate your castle or something. But
but then she like supposedly she thought she birthed the Messiah, so like I can see why she wouldn't fight him on that. But like even Paul is like pissed off at her, like, oh, you made me a freak. Like she just fucking gets it from all angles, and instead of like talking, she just fucking internalizes it and just is afraid of everybody.
And maybe that's realistic, kind of like where you would have a 15-year-old boy.
Don't need that. I don't need that realistic bullshit. We're oppressed enough. Like, I mean, I need to see a strong ass woman, and I want to see her know what she's doing and be capable and fucking own her shit. That's what I need.
Which, I mean, people be riding worms and shit. So, I mean, what's realistic, truly? But...
Amen. This is the year 10,191. We still don't have rights. Fuck you.
That's the hardest part for me, is waiting for a worm riding scene in this new iteration.
Oh my God. Also,
I wanted it so bad.
Not having that soundtrack, I'm sorry, but that like just fucking epic, like... like, you know, like whatever, anything happened. God, that was really bad. Sorry, my voice is awful right now. But like just that fucking epic, like guitar comes in and then like the choir and then like
I'm obsessed.
It's fucking incredible.
It's so good.
The
it's
Lynch
so good.
film, fucking music by Toto, and then this one is just normal, you know, just normal music. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this movie specifically with its casting does bring race into like the actual like dynamics of Dune. I mean, we have Zendaya's character split throughout. We have the Shadow Mapes, who is the woman who is basically Jessica's assistant and is also a woman of color. And then we have Kynes, her character. I mean, there are Fremen women of color in this movie that are all new to the Duneverse, or you know,
iconic.
And that, you know, I think, you know, I'm really interested in the second movie, how they reconcile, you know, Timothée Chalamet becoming savior of the world
when he's still a white dude.
It's like, is Zendaya? I mean, is Zendaya gonna let that happen? I don't know.
Yeah, truly, it's going to be a more interesting conversation. And I think, too, going back to what Jessica was saying earlier, the dynamics of the conversation about gender, because of the way that it's being presented in this one versus the last one alongside race, I really do wonder at like how they're going to address it, because a lot of that does come up later, and it's going to be really interesting. Like, because they could possibly just change the expectation completely and rewrite an ending to fit this introductory narrative as kind of like this version, so to speak. But like, I think it's gonna be cool. I don't know.
I also
watch
really
it
like
be incredibly reductive.
I know.
It's just like so bad and toxic and completely unnuanced.
Well, I really like. I feel like they're setting something up cool, hopefully, because I mean, like, there are so many. Like, this cast is wonderfully diverse, and it's still Timothy is Paul, who a fucking white man, right? Who is leading all of these characters of color and, you know, outlasting and outliving and all of this. So, like, I like that Paul is questioning himself in this, right? I like that is an aspect that is happening where he is doubting that he is the one. He's doubting himself, like, you know, and I hope that as he comes into, like, sure, maybe I am this person, but what does that mean? Like, and what does that look like? I hope that we get a different version of a Messiah that we, like, maybe, sure, like, this person helps to teach people how to fight or has, like, some sort of support role in empowering the people to rise up and take power for themselves, but it's not done in, like, a gross, I mean, even just talking about it, it sounds gross, but, like, I hope that there's a better way to do that. And I wonder if part of them having Paul question himself so much and so fundamentally is a part of that. I hope.
Yeah, and I think they've at least laid a foundation of like having, I mean, he will have, just from what we've seen from the Fremen so far, we've only seen a handful of characters, but I mean, Stilgar, Javier Bardem will be there, Zendaya will be there. There will be at least like a diverse cast around him. I mean, and we're going to see potentially hundreds, thousands more Fremen, who knows. I'm just hoping, yeah, I totally agree. I'm hoping that there is going to be this maybe less focused just on Timothy, more egalitarian vision for the ending. And it could be very different, just because obviously with the ending of the Lynch film, it goes bananas, and it could, and maybe that's because of timing. And I think this one movie is just as long as the Lynch film.
Yes.
Like both like 2.5 hours or something. So obviously there were a lot of cuts in the Lynch film, if like, you know, as far as what you can fit, but so hopefully they're giving themselves all the room and all the foundation they need to do something that's not like completely toxic.
Yeah. I really hope so.
How did the book end? Was it close at all to the Lynch film?
The Lynch film, I will say, is very true to the book in tone and general plot overline.
Okay.
But for a few, I mean, I could talk about different examples, but like the sound weapons and stuff are not in the book.
Yeah, because those aren't in this either. Like I
You
forget
think
what they
having a
call
giant worm would be enough to beat the hurricane?
Right.
Yeah.
Not like shooting guns on top of it,
like
but
going pew pew and like
Be like,
literally having that like
try to
be a
break
bullet.
this rock. Try to break this rock. Break. Oh, so
But-
stupid. And then he's like, break, and it breaks, and they're like,
yeah,
well.
the tone I think is truly where the Lynch film kind of like shines, even if it is all over the place, because the book itself it has a very almost like stage Shakespearean quality to it, where it can almost be performed on the stage. There's elements of soliloquy. There's sort of clown-esque characters. The Shadow Mapes character is great in the book, and is much more of a slapstick character who is funny. And there's, obviously at the end, Aaliyah is so funny, and she's very rude and child like comic almost. I think she's very funny in the books. So like I think the Lynch film it took like tonally things from the book that were true, at least in my experience reading it. And then this new movie is a little bit more new territory as far as tone goes. And I think it brings Dune into much more of a modern experience. And as we've been talking about, I think like the Jessica character is key to that. I don't think there's as much like myth making and stuff. I think like even the soundtrack kind of sets it in a more real place. It's pulling more from the Middle Eastern obvious influences, making those more known, I think. Because because they just don't touch on that at all in the Lynch film. And I'm like, well, we're saying a bunch of words that aren't Arabic. And I will say, just take a quick shout out that in this movie we do see a muad'Dib, we do see the mouse, as Eric Caballero said, a sweaty mouse.
A sweaty mouse. The sweaty little mouse.
Who I will say canonically, I mean, it's just like is so perfect as a metaphor for everything that Paul does. And
a sweaty little mouse running through the desert trying not to die.
Yeah, because
I mean that's Timothy, right? That's just the actor.
Timothée Chalamet.
That's so meta. What was cool that I really liked, I loved how fluid language was in this film. Like where they would go from speaking one language to the next to like using sign language.
It was like sign to French to English to like just intermittently, like and for the sake of like not just like safety, but like it like what a skill, like in that moment when they're like, if they're in a space where they can't speak, they can sign, but then she like signs quickly like he may no sign, and you're like, oh okay, shit, how do we, it's just what an interesting thing that not a lot of movies do. Like, and I just like that conversation, that exploration was cool.
I wonder if part of that too, because like I feel like in the Lynch film, Jessica and Paul felt more like a package. They were like buddies. They were together. They were so good at playing off of each other and knowing each other's steps and just like right there next to each other the entire time. And I fucking loved that. In this one, they feel really like separate and like separate entities, but like this is the only way that they really like communicate like together, where it's like, oh, they're on the same page. So I wonder if part of it was to like be like, oh yeah, they need that connection. Like here, let's do that, because they just watered down both characters a little bit. But
totally, and I think they make him more of a teen. Like he feels a little bit less of a full like 35-year-old, and
true.
If you think about how, especially the first scene where he's kind of just like, Mom, let me like eat my cereal or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
literally.
Like, I am 15. I am like a billionaire, like royal person. Let me just eat my cereal. And yeah, I think he has those moments where I think it just feels a little bit more like, real character, well, like, and not
even when they're in the tent together, like there's a little bit of that like, what do we do angst, but also like everything's gone, but it's still very much like a kind of awkward teen and his distressed mom. Like, what do we say? Like, he's dead. Okay. What do we do? You're like, oh, okay, that
just yell at each other. If we yell at each other, this is how we communicate our feelings.
Yeah.
I just like you got to dwell on some of those more visual metaphors and something like that. I mean, they're just the visuals too. We can talk about that too. And I maybe we want to talk something about like Blade Runner 2049 and how that changed Blade Runner, because it is really kind of similar as far as like having an original artistic vision for this classic science fiction film, but there were just very subtle different viewing experience completely.
Oh yeah, I mean that. I feel like that's where what is the director's name? Sorry, Denis Villeneuve.
Yes.
Villeneuve.
Who was very pissed that this wasn't coming exclusively to the big screen. He's like, you cannot experience this. Like he did you hear all that? He got like real messy.
Okay, Christopher Nolan. Yeah. Calm down. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, really, it's just like you can't, whatever. My favorite, okay, this is besides the point and I will come back. One of my favorite tweets ever is from, do you know Io Debris? Mm-mm. Okay, so she's a comedian. She's very funny. She's been in a bunch of stuff. She replaced actually Jenny Slate in Big Mouth. She was the actor who replaced her. Anyways, when that was all happening, she tweeted, "Oh my God, just saw Tenet on my iPad Mini. So good. It's so it's like it's one of my favorite jokes." Anyways, I think about it all the time. Io Debris, you're a genius. I love you. So funny. But going back to this is I feel like the second thing I've notably seen from this director, and he is so good at taking existing IP, reimagining it, but having it still feel of world and of story in such a beautiful way, and finding the humanity in these big, wild, futuristic sci-fi stories, like finding the nuance of emotion, of character, of distress, of angst in the little things and in the lineage and in the longing looks and in the wording and the embrace and the breath. Like, I feel like he's so good at the nuance within these big stories, and he shines. I mean, 2049, for example, like that whole opening sequence with Dave Bautista, like to set the mood was like, this is fucking Blade Runner. That's insane. Like, how sick. And similarly with this, like, I feel like he's just really good. He's like a really good director. And I literally cannot wait, because I do think this was such a good stage set piece, like just kind of making the table, and the feast is yet to come. And when it does, I think it's going to be incredible, hopefully. I can't wait. I cannot wait for the sequel now. It's going to be so sick.
I think that they are absolutely going to do Children of Dune after this and just continue doing. I would love for them to continue to do Dune, because like I feel like there is a lot here, and I mean, I feel like it is a really gorgeous film, and for all my gripes with it, I think I think you're right where he's really good at like reimagining IPs, which is incredible, which is something that most people can't do, especially for like sci-fi, when like sci-fi is just like already like really difficult to reimagine, and just like doing it so well and so elegantly and so eloquently, and just having like such nuanced characters too, and so much to say. And he's so good at subverting tropes, with like, I mean, the end of 2049 where we're like, oh, he's the one, wait, no, he's not the one, okay. So that's what gives me hope that like this isn't going to be that gross savior story that that we're expecting. But yeah, I think that's going back to Jessica. I think that's probably why, like, because all of the characters that he directs are very flawed and very like, nobody is really strong. So like that does track. And I didn't think about that just being his directing style, but like, come on.
I mean, literally in an age of nostalgia-driven reboots, it's kind of nice to have somebody who does something interesting instead of just like a plug-and-chug new actor, same story situation. Just it's nice to have somebody with vision taking a swing at a beloved property that has such a fan base and has such a history. Something
Especially
as big as
sci-fi.
Dune. And
which sci-fi can be like so hit or miss, and always a big budget, like almost no matter what,
I feel like his vision for the second book, if I'm just like gonna guess, I think
let's do it. Big guesses.
I just like with big themes of this book, I mean, faith is a really underdeveloped theme in this, when you literally are making the god of the future. And I don't think faith is something that they bring up enough, but it's something that is still extremely relevant in all of our lives.
Yeah.
I
mean, for a movie that's technically the New Testament in space.
Yeah. So I think he's going to have this push and pull with like, is Paul actually the Kwisatz Haderach? And it's not going to necessarily be like, drink the water of life, blue eyes, white savior, like
blue eyes, white savior. Yugi.
Oh my God,
Yugi
the
pulls out
ultimate
his
card.
Yeah.
Blue eyes, white savior. Oh my God.
I just think he's going to make it a little bit more like, is he or isn't he? Because I think even with Blade Runner, where it's like, like it's the original, there's this whole thing with like Harrison Ford. Is he a replicant? Is he a human? And I think there's kind of maybe that similar push and pull of like, you can see what you want to see. You can see, two different or several different types of endings in this. And, maybe that does involve, if they're actually going to do another sequel or something when he's clearly, going to have to be some sort of giant desert god. But yeah.
I mean, they could even make it like his sister, right? Like, what if Alia is the one? And, Oscar Isaac is not white. What if she's like not a white presenting baby?
Literally give it to her because she's already so sick. And
And like the prophecy is like, it turns out that it was that like the mother and the son will bring forth the baby, and then like I don't know, but like doing something so it's not Timothée Chalamet. I have faith after thinking about 2049. I have faith.
I think it's gonna be fucking sick. So that answers the question on what they're doing.
Did you see the Joey, like, how you doing?
How you doing? Yeah. Iconic. All of the Dune memes have been so funny.
Incredible.
Should we take it to the outro?
Let's do the outro. So we're back. We made it back from Arrakis. Eric.
Yes.
Lefebvre.
Yes.
Who was this for?
This was for... Honestly, it was for David Lynch. It felt like it was very much for him to just kind of like get in there and play, and then it kind of went awry, which is why I feel like he's like, hey, I don't really want this. I don't really claim this anymore. But it did feel like a fun little embellishment for him.
Who do you think it was for? Other Eric. Wow, there's so
Eric
many
B.
Erics. Oh my goodness.
You could say he's the best. You could say he's the best one.
Best.
I feel like this was for political science majors.
Okay.
Hi.
It was for supply chain management people. It was for theologians. Really, it's really for everybody, I think.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. So I am going to say I think it was for Toto, because that fucking theme, that like how fucking fun to write that. Like, if you like, we're both musicians, right, Eric? So like, if somebody is like, hey, we want you to score this, and like the sky's the fucking limit, like, and we just want rock ballads, like, how much fun would that be?
Oh, it would be so sick.
I think that would be so fun. Lefebvre.
Yes.
Did you like this movie?
I did. I thought it was cool. Yeah, I liked it. I liked it like a solid like. Just an even keel across the board, liked it.
Mm-hmm. How about you, better Eric?
I definitely like this film. Definitely not. I mean, there's a lot of to criticize because it's such a big movie, but definitely like.
Yeah, I love this movie.
Ooh.
I mean, we talked about why it's all, it's got these problematic things, and I recognize that, but I still really, really, really love it because it's so nostalgic for me. And also, I just really love, I had a great time writing that fucking paper, and I love I love everything that I talked about already. And I think it's really fun and really interesting to talk about like the gender dynamics, and also just it's a fun movie to be critical about too, because like it's such a big movie that everybody has you can't watch this movie and not have an opinion about it. And it does have its more gross moments, and I will, ignore those. whenever it comes on screen, or just be very critical of them. But yeah, I think overall, I really still love this movie.
Yeah.
What about the 2021 version, Mr. Lefebvre? Is it new, interesting, or the same? Or is it progressive, regressive?
I think it's new and interesting. Just in the way that it's like spending a little bit more time with the characters. It has more room to breathe. I think it's progressive in a lot of the ways it's trying to approach the conversation of colonization. Also, just in the general inclusion of non-white people. I think that that's like a huge step forward, especially in an allegory about colonizing the Middle East, arguably. I think it has a lot more to say. And I feel like I say that all with a big like asterisk because I do want to finish the story. So as it stands now, that's how I feel. I want to know the rest of it to really qualify that opinion. I think it's evolved with today's ideals in the very same way.
What do you think, Best?
I think it was jarring being a book fan and having read the book beforehand and having a really elegant viewing experience where the first film is just not, I would say, elegant. This is such a mature movie, but I think kids might enjoy it too because it's visually interesting. But it's just firing on all cylinders as far as like a modern, elegant film. And given that it is being released in still in the pandemic and everything, and I saw it in on my TV, it was still like a great like kind of almost return to cinema a bit for me. So I just thought I got a lot out of viewing it. I've seen it twice in like a week span. So it was really exciting. I think it was just exactly kind of what I needed. So I'll say it's very good.
Yeah, I also watched it 2 times within a week. So, and there are things on the second watch that I did pick up that I did not on the first watch, which is very cool. I thought that it was definitely new and interesting. Maybe a little bit, it's a different pace for sure, where, you were just talking about how it's a different vibe to the entire movie, right? So it does feel a little bit... It is a little bit slower, so that was a little bit jarring coming straight off of the first one. But I do think that it was progressive in all the ways that you guys already mentioned, where it's like we have a more inclusive cast, especially when we're talking about colonization and everything. I think that I have to withhold judgment on all of that like big asterisk because we only do have half of the story. So I can't form a full opinion on it because we don't know how that ends. And, it's being set up as one thing. And if it pans out that it's the white savior thing, then I am going to say that it's regressive, but I mean, we don't know yet. So we'll see. We'll see. But I do think it was a delight to watch just because it was such a beautiful movie.
Yeah.
Which was
we'll check back in 2 years and see how we're all feeling.
2 years, which oh my God, they're gonna make that movie in 2 years. That's
is it? I'm
yeah,
maybe
2023 is when it's gonna come out, and that feels too fast because they're gonna have to rebuild all those sets and everything, because they didn't film them back to back. So I mean, we'll see.
I mean, they've got the budget.
I mean, now they do.
They've got the budget of budgets for this film.
Eric, who do you think it was for?
It is exclusively for Timothée Chalamet's career. This is his Star Wars moment. It's launching him as if Lady Bird and Call Me By Your Name didn't already set him into the trajectory of rich, wealthy, white male actor. This is the ticket. He is the lead. He is Paul. He is there. That's congrats to that man. Way to go. Way to go.
How about you, Best?
I
have to call you guys by your last name, and this feels very weird because I'm usually like a first name person, so I'm sorry.
It's so funny every time we hang out too, because Eric's gonna come visit next week, and
3 Erics in
the
one
Erics
house.
Like it's always a treat.
I know. I call you California Eric.
Yeah. And then Chicago Eric.
Eric. I would think this movie is for people, but especially queer men who love daddies.
Ooh.
Oh my God.
Because there are a lot of
Yes.
daddies, and have never been fewer homophobic stereotypes
Yeah.
in a Dune film. So
Yes.
we are queer men hive, daddy hive is buzzing.
It's buzzing.
Because we got naked Oscar Isaac.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's
and
right. Yeah.
Jason Momoa, Javier Bardem. I mean,
it's
I don't know.
it's
Also,
a-
people who
it's-
like twinks. People who like twinks are living too.
Yeah. Congrats to the twink community. Shout out for your king. He's really doing it. Congrats.
Yeah. I think this movie was by and large for men. Both queer and straight men, because
Yeah.
I feel like it was also showing just men in general that you can, be cool with each other and show emotion and be stoked around each other and be nourishing, right? Like, can you imagine like growing up with a dad that was just as like compassionate and understanding as Oscar Isaac? Like, I mean, Daddy Duke, like, come on.
I just
That's
need him to
also
tell
real
me-
hot, guys. It's the hottest thing.
It's crazy. And Oscar Isaac, if for whatever reason you're listening to this, if we ever meet in person, if you tell me the words "I'm proud of you," I will both cry and cry more. I just I don't even know how to. Yeah. Yep. That's what'll happen.
Yep. Lefebvre, did you like it?
I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I'm so excited for the next one. Yeah, I loved it. I'm obsessed with it. I'm gonna rewatch it. It's so good.
How about you, Bess?
Definitely like the movie. I wonder how it's even going to do in award season, honestly. I don't know if performances will be awarded, but it's definitely going to be winning for a lot of editing, a lot of sound, a lot of design stuff. So I think it's going to get its due, or Dune.
It's Dune.
But yeah, big thumbs up for me. Even if it was very jarring from a book person perspective.
Yeah.
I liked it. I liked it a lot. Did I like it as much as I liked the original? Again, I'm gonna have to withhold judgment because I don't know how it ends. And even though it was jarring, it was great. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it on a second watch. It didn't feel like 84 hours long, which is great.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think that's the end of our show.
I think that's it.
Eric, thank you so much for joining us here on a weeknight to chit chat about the world of Dune.
Thank you so much to you two for having me, and like a great discussion. I would pay people to talk about Dune at them. So.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll actually text you our Venmo. Speaking of,
okay.
just in case you presented it. I just didn't want it. I didn't want it to be awkward.
Right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been so great. I had such a good time.
Yeah, this has been a treat.
And thank you all for listening. Don't forget to rate and review us.
Oh, follow us on social media. What am I saying? Yes, follow us on social media. Yeah.
Our artwork and music is by Eric Lefebvre. Editing is by Danny Barkley. And thanks again to both of you, Eric Best and Eric Lefebvre.
Thank you, Jez.
And remember, stay cute.
And stay critical.
Bye.
Goodbye. This podcast has been brought to you by the NOTstalgia Network.
Visit thenotStalgiaNetwork.com for more.
You enter the dungeon and see the evil wizard pointing his wand directly at you. He says, "Show me a funny and delightful actual play Dungeons & Dragons podcast, or I'll consume your souls!" What do?
I take out my phone and find Quest Friends Forever on Spotify.
I show him how to find Quest Friends Forever on Apple Podcasts.
I share the Quest Friends Forever Instagram and YouTube pages with him.
And you all get critical hits!
Yay!
Quest Friends Forever is an actual play podcast starring 4 friends with varying levels of Dungeons & Dragons experience. Join us for new episodes every other Wednesday as we embark on fantasy adventures, play fast and loose with the rules, and laugh at each other's shenanigans. No prior D&D knowledge is required to listen, so everyone can feel free to join the fun. Quest Friends 4, that's the number 4, like how there's 4 of us, ever. Find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. That's Quest Friends Forever.